Thank you, everyone. My name is Ankit. I'm a principal consultant at ARUP. I'm currently leading a program called Flexibility Markets Unlocked, and I've been heavily involved in the energy digital space, kind of leading the virtual energy system and the data sharing infrastructure. So the topic today is really close to my heart, which is how do we de-risk energy transition? What are some of the initiatives, policies, and innovations that are happening in the space right now? And really understand how we use energy and what are the optimizations we can do to reach a sustainable and a greener future together. So we'll do some introductions and then get into it. Start with you.
Hi, thanks. My name's Dan Marsden. I'm a group product manager within E.ON, and my focus area is on cities and the growth that we want to have within cities. And specifically, I'm looking at how we can use digital twin technology to help people plan and understand their energy usage and to drive the decarbonisation of that.
I'm Newey. I'm Chief Executive of Energy Systems Catapult, which is the sister Catapult of Connected Places. So I'm very delighted that they asked me to come along as well. We focus on helping companies who can take advantage of this extraordinary transition, particularly around the demand side and how the whole thing is going to fit together.
So Anitua, I'm the Executive Director for Infrastructure and Energies at the Crown Estate, which I don't know if you know the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate is a company that's in private and public, and we manage a portfolio of 16 billion, where it's roughly 11 billion is in real estate. So we're the owners of Regent Street, St. James's. We have a portfolio around the country of retail parks and shopping centers, and trying to move more into the regeneration mixed-use development. But at the same time, we also manage the seabed. So we run all of the offshore leases for offshore wind, hydrogen, carbon capture, so everything that is not oil and gas, basically. My role, I look after everything that is infrastructure and energy, and anything that is basically non-offshore wind. So I look after carbon capture, hydrogen, ports, that cables, onshore energy, district energy in London, the sorts.
Okay. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Kjell, Eriksson, Vice President in DNV. We are a global risk management and certification organization. And what we also do is that we model the world's and the UK's energy system. Presented our 25 report in February this year, so some insights from that which I'm happy to share in this discussion. My job today is to help our customers to get responsible and robust digital and AI solutions for industrial use.
Amazing. Thank you all. I have some questions to kick us off, but I'm assuming most of you have the phone. Please, there's Slido there. Ask any questions, and if there's a question that you like, thumbs it up so we can get to that first. Just start us off. Guy, if I can start with you. You might have the most holistic view on your role of the whole energy sector. So can you tell us about some of the challenges and the future needs that we are facing in the system right now, and how we can address those needs and challenges?
Yeah, sure. I mean, at a 50,000 feet level, I mean, the transition is really hard. Every aspect of it, when it's touching on people's lives, huge technological challenges, big infrastructure challenges, all of those questions that lots of the people in the audience and people on the stands will know. But of course, that means there is an absolutely huge commercial opportunity. I'll just bring out a few things. We did a set of modelling as well with our whole systems modelling. I look forward to seeing which one of us is right or wrong. But we kind of put stuff in three buckets when we think about the innovation challenge. So one is stuff you've got to implement now. Absolutely, low regrets. These are the things we're going to have to deploy as quickly as we can. And those are things like heat pumps, grid upgrades, electric vehicles, nuclear, renewables, heat networks, comes across very strongly in the modelling, all of those areas. And there's barriers to all of those, there's commercial challenges, etc. We've just got to get on with that. If we're serious about this, we've just got to get on with that as part of the decarbonisation journey. Second thing is areas where we need the most innovation. It's not to say there's not some innovation needs in the first bucket of stuff, but these are stuff where, your technology still needs to improve. Nuclear SMRs, potentially for heat as well, hydrogen production, heavy goods vehicles, whether that's electric or hydrogen, CCUS, direct air capture, all of those. If you want to make the numbers add up, you need to get on with this stuff. But just rolling out technology is not going to be enough. It all has to work together, and it's a point that is often missed and is an innovation challenge as big as any of the innovation challenges on the technology. What do I mean by that? It's about integration. So that is about planning, that is about skills and supply chain. It's crucially about data. It's really interesting hearing the panel before and hearing lots of the ways that the transport sector is going there. The energy sector is early stage in looking at the opportunity of digital and data, I would say. We're doing more and more work in that area, involved in the task forces, etc. The team are out there talking about local authority data and local data with our net zero data product. So if you want to find more information about that, come and grab us at our stand. But again, all of that is in aid of how does this fit together. So that integration challenge is as big as any of the others. I would just say two things as kind of things that I worry about the most or are the biggest opportunities. Peak heat. When it's really cold and the wind doesn't blow for 2 weeks, how the hell are we going to make sure that Regent Street doesn't go cold or turn off, or other parts of the country? And second is consumer acceptance. Are people going to welcome and want the technologies? They're not going to be forced into anything. How do you make it brilliant experiences for them? And E.ON and others are absolutely grappling with that challenge.
Amazing. You forgot to talk about tidal. It's one of the technologies.
Yeah.
Daniel, if I can move to you.
Sure.
We heard about the challenges and the needs, and you're very much the product guy, focusing on building solutions here. Can you give us some of the innovation programs that are currently being run and the ways you're tackling these needs and challenges?
Sure. I mean, when I think about the innovation programs that are being run at the moment, one of the main areas that we're seeing is the support that people are providing to local authorities in local area energy planning, for example. How do you go and build up a plan that helps an authority understand what their decarbonisation requirements are based on what their energy usage is, what their constraints are, what their opportunities are, and then start to build out all of those existing plans that we know the technologies for, the heat networks, the heat pumps, etc. And it's been great that we've seen the open and more data coming out from the Energy Systems Catapult to go and support some of that stuff. One of the areas that we're seeing innovation in is in supporting some of that as well, because we know there are some challenges with some of those data. Some of it relies on EPC information, and I don't know whether people have looked up their EPC for their house, but it's not always 100% accurate, I think it's fair to say. So, like an interesting example of innovation that we're seeing at the moment is that we're working with a startup called Kestrix, who are using thermal drones to go and scan houses, to build up a thermal image of them, to get a much more accurate picture of what the housing stock in a particular area is like. And doing that within an area is important because that then helps you go and do that work at a scale. We know that if we carry on doing the work that we're doing at the moment, individually, based on a house-by-house basis, that's just not going to reach the scale that we need to go and achieve the net zero targets that everybody's got. So certainly that's one of the big areas that we've got. It was interesting that a couple of the sessions today have also spoken about federated data and how digital twins can join up. That's going to be massively important in making sure that those constraints that I mentioned are addressed. And again, it's really interesting to see the work that is being started on joining up local area energy plans with regional area energy plans, so that we can start to go and address some of those constraints that there might be within substations or just generation overall. And then if I think about that as being the kind of top level of some of those things, actually from a consumer point of view, a lot of the innovation that we're seeing now is coming about microgrids, which is how do you go and look at the individual use of a building, whether that's a company or whether that's just an individual, and combine all of the information that you've got when they're when they've got a full set of energy solutions. So when they've got solar panels, a battery, they've got EV charging, and they've got really good understanding of the frequency of their energy usage. How do you go and create the system that minimizes the call that they make onto the grid in the first place? So that you're minimizing that call. And that's when we then talk about what's good for consumers, that's when it starts to make a difference to them. You know, how can you use your battery when you've got peak demand so that it's cheaper for you, and then charge up that battery when the sun's shining, or because I'm in Manchester at night, when the electricity rate's cheaper at least. As you say, we're further away than the transport organisations on some of these things. So the idea about how a microgrid would join up with that top level, I think is still some way off, but
Yeah.
that's what I would see the innovation.
I mean, unlocking flexibility is definitely a huge challenge, and I'm currently very much focused in that space. One of the things that always comes into mind is when both of you are talking about is data and access to the data and enabling trust into the system. So, Kjell, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong there.
Kjell, yeah.
Kjell.
Yeah.
Was how do we create a trusted, secure, and resilient energy system? And one of the things we always talk about is data and AI and trying to get there, but also begs this question of, is this data reliable? How do you actually make business decisions without knowing where the data is coming from, especially with the AI coming in, which is hallucinating half the time?
No, a very good question. I sort of answer that with sort of 5 points, which I think we need to think about to make the energy system or the infrastructure sustainable. One is continue to invest. If you look historically, the last 25 years, the UK have invested about 1.3% of GDP in energy production and transmission and distribution facilities. We need to keep that investment level for the next 25 years, which, so 1.3% of GDP, it's a lot of money, but should be manageable. So that's one. Second thing, I think, which was mentioned also here, more efficient admin processes on getting connected to the grid, on the planning, the consenting. So things need to move faster. Third, I would say digitalization and AI, and I think we are moving towards a future where artificial intelligence is coming closer to the core. It's not chatbots and so on. We need to move that technology into our systems that we are managing. But to do that, we need robustness in a different way than we have today. I had a very interesting conversation with the Chief AI Officer in the British Army. Just so you have a Chief AI Officer in your army, just so that you know that. They are using a lot of AI. They have traffic lights on their AI. Green, it's okay. It's within what's been tested, the algorithm works, you can push the button. Red, something is wrong. You shouldn't trust me, go back and check. And I think that is how we have to sort of build digital systems for these industrial types of applications going forward. The fourth one I was mentioning is market design. It must be a sort of make sense for people to charge their electric vehicles in the middle of the night, for example, when the demand is not so high. And that requires sort of a different design of the markets. And the last one I would mention, which has mentioned by others, is public acceptance. We need smart meters, we need to share data, we need more overhead lines and distribution lines and use the system in a different way. And that requires sort of us working with society, perhaps in a different way that we've done in the past. But I agree also with, I mean, when we model the world, or model the UK, our take is that by 2050, UK would have dropped its CO2 emissions by 82% compared to 1990. Okay, not net zero, but nevertheless, it's a significant improvement. And by 2035, all electricity production in the UK will be carbon-free, which is also an achievement. Last year, 2024, was the lowest use of coal in the UK since in 300 years, since 1724. So a lot of things are going in the right direction. What is holding us back is vehicles. So the electrification of cars is going too slow. And households with sort of, or housing with as mentioned, with heat pumps. And I think that is stopping the UK from moving and meeting net zero target. And maybe hard not to crack. If I compare to Norway, where I live, 95% of vehicles sold today are electric. 95%. In the UK, the figure last year was 18%. And the sad thing with that 80% of diesel and petrol cars are sold have an average lifetime of 15 years. 2040, they will still be here. That is sort of, and the same with sort of modernizing housing. That I think is a challenge. I think the grid we can manage and the power production or electricity production will be renewable. We are definitely moving in that direction. But then what's to do with these other two?
That's very good. And just a positive note there too. In UK, we've achieved more energy smart meter installations so far this year than we have in 21, 22, and 23 combined.
Right.
So we're getting there, a long way to go. But we kind of heard about the domestic level, kind of the flexibility, home space, EVs, things like that. But so your team is very much focused on the big picture, on the real estate aspect of it, and new big infrastructure build. Can you give us some of the challenges you're facing around managing and delivering some of the offshore wind projects that might be coming in your team? And how are you actually capturing the energy that we need to offset some of the demand increases that we are seeing right now?
I think a lot of the challenges have already been named, right? By my three colleagues here. First of all, in terms of the generation of that electricity, of that power, is the fact that now the renewables, basically, they're dependent on fluctuating weather patterns. That is one. Then there's the second question, which is the mismatch between where it is generated and where we need to bring it. We have a problem with an aging infrastructure that was designed for a centralized, fossil fuel, predictable, and close to demand power generation. So how do we reconcile and where we will find the money in order to invest in all of those? And we face that. And as it was already mentioned, all the demand side, we are seeing, although it's encouraging that we are starting to see consumers moving that way, I think at the underlying basis of all of this, there are regulatory and market challenges. The business models are not there. The technology is not ready yet. And the point that you made, Guy, before on integration is one that we see very much, because I think we face many, many players, and we're all trying to solve a little piece of the puzzle. But if we don't align, it becomes really hard. So how we are, in particular, the Crown Estate, trying to do that is, I would say, twofold. One, on the offshore space, because we have that quasi-regulatory type of role. In the end, we have almost monopolistic approach to the seabed. We are trying to encourage what we call the marine delivery route map, and really trying to work together with a lot of people around the table, from organizations that look after other uses of the seabed, either fishing or defense or transportation, people that are part of the same value chain, developers, etc., to try to create those scenarios and pathways as to how we could then deliver by 2050 across all of the different uses. Because the problem is, if we try to solve for just the energy system, we will miss the nature, we will miss the social side of it, we will miss the economic growth, we will miss the supply chains, right? And that is what we're trying to do on that. So we're trying to encourage that, and we have an initiative called the Marine Delivery Route Map, and we're trying to bring people around the table. When we look then at the onshore, when we are, if you want, one more player, we work with people like the Energy Systems Catapult sometimes, and other times what we are trying to do is we are trying to use our own assets in order to test things. So, for example, we are trying to understand if, given that we know we are going to be doing developments across the country, and we could be an anchor load or an anchor customer for a potential future development, could we start thinking about ways in which we could collocate and we could aggregate demand so that we provide certainty? And therefore, as Daniel was saying, we can start thinking about microgrids around what we do. We really think about what's going on in storage, what can happen with waste energy, how do we think about these multidisciplinary teams, and how do we think about the different value chains and the role that we can play in de-risking some of that. But as you say, it is a challenging world, and we definitely cannot do it alone. So those are the key things that we try to do.
Amazing. Can you talk a little bit more about the storage aspect of things too? Because Crown Estate has a huge land portfolio, right? And long duration energy storage is going to be a key part of the solution. Are you seeing some of the challenges around getting the storage technology up and running, or are there any policies or anything like that that are holding them back?
So absolutely. First of all, we own 0.4% of the land of the country, so not a huge land portfolio, and half of that is top quality farming land that should be directed to food production, right?
Yep.
So, but yes, we are as
Definitely
well
bigger
the
than my
owners
house.
of the carbon, the under seabed carbon capture storage, for example, as well. Hydrogen we look into as well. It's part of what we're trying to do. So it's both the onshore and the offshore in terms of the long range. I think it's the technology challenges that Guy was alluding to before. In terms of batteries, in the end, all they provide today at max, what is it, 2 hours if we're lucky? Even if we look at grid scale, that basically will support us with a blip, going to your point around the peak demands and the blackouts. We are trying to as well work with academia and talking to universities as to how do we think about thermal storage as well? How do we think about pump storage, pump hydro? But in the end, the geography of the country and how do we use reservoirs, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So I think we will need to have a convened effort across the country and really think about first how we manage our peaks before anything. Can we, as Daniel was saying, offset our demands by co-locating people with different uses, with different profiles, so that we reduce that peak draw. And then once we have that as well, think in terms of generation, what can provide that base load when a lot of our renewables, they'll just move and we won't be able to control it, right? So the SMR point, hydro. Another thing, for example, that the Crown Estate is working with the industry on is tidal range and tidal stream, right? That is predictable. Could that be? Well, we come back to the point around regulation and policy support. That is very, very important, and that is something that we try to work with to try to see if we can also provide the data and the evidence and bring the people together around the table to support further innovation on those.
That's amazing. Thank you. There's this question that's from the public on how do you balance the need to deliver net zero against providing climate resilient solutions? I think, Daniel, if you want to kick that off.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've got to admit, in the work that we've done so far, we're not overlaying both energy usage and how that transition is going to work against things like how the climate's going to change over that time as well. But one of the things that's going to be important as we work with our local authorities and with the relationships that we have with cities is to make sure that they're building in their understanding across lots of different fields into the planning work that they're doing. So if they understand that there's particular, flood risks in particular areas and whatever else, that's built into their overall planning. I think we're just at the beginning now with local area energy plans, combining with other sets of data to be able to start giving local authorities the knowledge to be able to go and plan and manage around that, really. And that's why it's important to think of these things not just as about what the energy system is, but how that impacts the whole of that particular city. Because ultimately, whilst we talk about all of these things and they sound very technical and technocratic, ultimately what we're talking about is people's houses, how warm they feel in them, how secure that supply is, and whether they're safe from flooding and things like that. Those are the most important things. So to really take it back down to that kind of community level rather than the technical level.
Amazing. I'm assuming you must be facing challenges around updating your data itself, because when you do a local energy plan, it's static. 2 years later, things change because you've already done something. How do you keep that going?
Yeah, I mean, that's my specialism is within digital twins, and that's why we want to take the approach of digital twins rather than creating a static plan, actually creating something that changes over time and reflects the progress that cities are making in doing this work, because we've all highlighted the fact that there is good progress being made here, and you need to be able to go and track against that. So that's one of the important things about moving from static reports to live data, live dashboards that show the progress of these things. And then just going back to that point about the fact that we're talking about cities where people live, is I think that digital twins are going to be much more powerful in being able to go engage communities to come in and work and understand that data. I went to Nottingham University, where they've got a great facility to be able to go and see data projected onto a 3D printed version of Nottingham. So just things that are more accessible for people to be able to understand what you're talking about when you're talking about energy transition.
Yeah, and you see it just on that point. You're seeing, it's really important, as Dan says, to make sure you remember how far the energy sector has come over the last 10 years. I said it was still in the foothills, and it's still not as far as other sectors, but it's come a long way from a kind of world of PDF maps that we were in not very long ago to a world of dynamic data on different layers, whether that's electric vehicle charging data, local spatial data, poverty statistics, so you can understand all of that, and you can do that dynamically, as you said, and have a much better understanding, which is fantastic progress. So there's much more to do, but the opportunity is really strong.
I think one thing also to reflect on is the more electrical you get, the more efficient you'll get. Yeah. An electrical engine is much more efficient than a combustion engine. So energy bills will drop because we will simply use less energy going forward when we get into an electrical society or an electrically powered society. We expect to see these changes from 2030 onwards. When we look at 2050, our claim is that the sort of average, on average, people will use 40% less on their energy bill compared to today, because it's simply more efficient. An electric vehicle is much cheaper to maintain than a conventional combustion engine vehicle. So you're sort of getting over that hurdle and into that landscape, and maybe that's arguments that can be used as well. It's getting greener and it's getting cheaper, but we have a sort of a couple of tough years ahead of us.
I mean, articulating the benefits case and being more transparent are very good points there. Just to close things off, and we've got 1 more minute left here, is we've talked about a lot of innovation, and I personally see innovation is not the issue, it's scaling that innovation to being more practical in time to reach net zero 2050. Just the open question is, how are you tackling that scale problem? How are you actually pushing your teams to go faster to reach that 2050 goal so we don't fall behind?
Within E.ON, one of the things that we've done is form a relationship with cities. So we've got a relationship, for example, with Coventry, where we're looking to go and help them go and achieve their energy objectives, and that's over 15 years. The good thing about that is that we can give the scale, and that gives us the time to bring in innovators to come and support with some of these amazing technologies that you see in all of the stands around us.
The thing we hear from the SMEs and the innovators that we work with, more than anything, because energy is highly regulated, highly policy driven, is get the incentives right, so I'm on a level playing field, so that when I'm trying to go to customers, I can say this is actually going to be the right thing to do for you, not just because it's the right thing to do for the climate, but actually it's economically. And to be honest, until we get those incentives right across the economy, we're doing this thing with kind of one arm tied behind our back. So that is the most important factor going forward.
But I think from a user point of view, if you want, I think it's also about understanding what the risk is in that decision. Yeah. So yes, you're looking towards scalability, and that's your ambition, but understanding that you don't need to get there in one shot. That it's okay to try, it's okay to pilot, and it's okay to understand what the risk involved in that decision, and what happens if it goes wrong. That's a risk you're willing to take, because otherwise we'll never have that first step.
Great.
Okay, I guess our contribution is doing what we've been doing for the last 160 years, and that is verifying that things work. We do that also in AI solutions, digital solutions, confirming that the digital twin is actually delivering what it's supposed to deliver. Amazing. One of our contributions.
Thank you so much, guys. Please, round of applause. It's a great time.